Of the Senate Education Committee will come to order. Please call the roll.
Senator Carroll,
Here.
Senator Funky Fromeyer, Senator Givens, Senator Higdon, Senator Meredith, Senator Neal, Senator Stivers, Senator Thomas, Senator Tishner, Senator Wilson, Senator Wise,
Present.
Vice Chair Williams, Chair West.
Here. We have a quorum. As is normal in Education Committee, please silence your cell phones. If you wish to speak against a bill, you need to sign up at the back right now before we get started, and that will be collected later. We have a lot of interesting topics to discuss today. First announcement is we do have an overflow room. That is room 171. Maybe at some point Education Committee may move to a bigger room. I don't know why we're not there already, but any overflow will go into 171. Do any members have special introductions of special guests? Senator Meredith and then Senator Wise.
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a group of educators from my home district that are in the front row, second row here, and I'd ask them to stand if we would welcome them to Frankfort.
Senator Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a group here that are visiting. First, to my right, on the left side of the room, though, is from Taylor County School System. I have Mr. John Tuning, Ms. Carlotta Johns, Ms. Shannon Cox that are here today as part of the Taylor County Education Group. Want to make them welcome and thank them for being here. And also, I think I'm going to speak for the Warren County delegation of the committee up here. Dr. Phil Neal with South Central Kentucky Community and Technical College is with us today. I think also Heather Rogers is with him. And then also President Caboni of WKU, I see back there as well. So I'll take the privilege of representing that little portion of Warren County to speak for all of us on the committee. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you. Welcome to Education Committee. First up on the agenda, we have Senate Bill 1 for consideration, an act relating to the Endowed Research Fund and making an appropriation therefor. We have presenting Senator Robert Stivers. If you would move to the table, you know the deal. Senator Stivers, I'm going to make a quick announcement while you're getting ready. Just for the next presentations, just to give you guys an idea of what will be happening. The order we will go in is Eastern Kentucky University, Murray State University, Western Kentucky University. That'll be the order as we proceed. Senator Stivers, the floor is yours whenever you're prepared to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to present Senate Bill 1. I want to go back and a little bit of history. I'm actually glad that Bob Jackson is here. Senator Williams has walked in. I was hopeful that Senator Neal would be here, but we were all present when probably the seed of this idea was created with me years ago. And as time goes on, several other things have factored into the creation of this bill. But I want to start with the former senator from, I believe it was Jefferson 19, which was Tim Shaughnessy, who years ago brought an idea about funding research for brain and spine injury trauma. At that time, and I look around, some of the younger people may not remember a gentleman named Christopher Reeve, but he was the Superman that people knew of that generation, and he'd had a tragic accident and had severed his spinal cord and was paralyzed. He actually came to the House and Senate chamber when Senator Shaughnessy, then Senator Shaughnessy, was talking about this. And we were one of the leaders in that type of research related to spine and brain injury trauma. Some stem cell research, which has now been defined by federal legislation as to what you can use in stem cell. I think it was done in the second Bush administration. But along those lines, we had created a funding stream that has been depleted over the years. And that funding stream was generally between $2 to $3 million, and it came off of excess fees, fines, and court costs for traffic violations. And as we have gone on and created various diversion programs, that has gone to a point of being about $500,000 to $600,000 a year. And the legislature for the last 4 or 5 years, several budget cycles, has been supplementing that, and I will get into that process. But that, along with something that my children never really liked me doing, but using them as examples. My daughter, I called her. She is a master's level biomedical engineer who went to the Gatton Academy, but I called her on a Sunday and seen what she was doing. And she told me she was going into the lab to clean up her rats. And I thought, what are you doing that for? And she said, well, we just severed all their spinal columns, and I have to keep them clean so we can see if we can do something about getting them to the point that they, and I'm not going to be anywhere close to saying what she told me, but basically creating new spinal paths or nerve paths, nerve roots to see if their back ends could somehow process and they could walk again. And I, just kind of blew me away that this was the type of research was going on, but it was something similar. And then a few years ago, the first class that was at the Craft Academy at Moorhead, a couple of students were picked to put their experiment on a SpaceX flight to go to the International Space Station to see what the impact would be of a weightless environment on tissue regeneration. That was a couple of 17-year-old kids. And I kept thinking through all this, this is great, but why don't we do more of it? And then in my trips in and around in various meetings over my career, I have listened to legislators and met with groups and seen what has gone on in the research area. My numbers may be and my information may be somewhat outdated, but it may be accurate. I haven't looked recently, but Duke, NC State, UNC Chapel Hill created this research triangle. Put a lot of money, invested a lot of money in it. At one time, they only had a 1% unemployment rate. They created a totally different type of research culture there, and were bringing in what would be called investigators and researchers and bringing in a lot of high-dollar investments, which totally changed the region. Then you look at Boston. Went and met with some individuals in Boston, and in the Boston area, because of the collaboration between the universities and the private sector, there were no doors. And there were over 30,000 unfilled jobs in the biomedical research area. Then in Indianapolis, Eli Lilly, they're hiring chemists all the time in pharmaceuticals to do research. Des Moines, Iowa, in ag tech, has become a hub. And most recently, I was in Pittsburgh and was looking at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, UPMC, which I understand now has become the largest employer in the state of Pennsylvania and the second largest recipient in the nation for National Institute of Health research dollars. They get over $750 million a year. And they, which were known in Pittsburgh for a steel and coal town, is now an academic and intellectual incubator in research. So over the years, talking with Senator Givens and others and others groups, and having watched what the spine injury and brain trust, we call it K-skirts in the budget, how they've been able to take these dollars that we have given them and work between UK. It's a collaborative between UK and U of L, that researchers, investigators come together and they do a 3-year program that is assessed by outside entities and scored and then brought to the board. And the individual who I've worked with over the last few years is Dr. Philip Tibbs, which I think some of our members may know Dr. Tibbs, being from Lexington. He was one of the better known neurosurgeons, and he actually fused my L1, 2, and 3 in my lower back in 2016. But they have been very successful in seeding money to these applicants who then for 3 years work on getting ready to go for big time NIH, Carnegie grants, or wherever else they can find them to continue to do research in this area. And depending on the year, they've had a 60 to 70% success rate in getting much larger grants in, bringing the investigators to either the University of Louisville, University of Kentucky, or in combination with each other. And they have become not only an incubator for academics and research, they have become somewhat of an economic engine, because these are very talented people that come here and generate pods of research. And then you have outside entities. And this is what you really saw in Boston and in North Carolina, outside entities that want to come in and help put up money to continue those researches or do spin-offs of the research. You monetize that research at the university level because of patents or otherwise things that can be developed from the research that is done there. So with that, these past few years, it seems as if our universities, several which are behind me, tend to be more of competitors than collaborators and cooperators. So this bill takes in kind of the model of what happened and started some 20 years ago, and that's why I call out Bob Jackson, because he was a senator here at that time, along with Senator Williams and Senator Neal, to create 5 tranches of potential monies. And I believe in the process, this is the bones, the skeleton of the process. It will be up to this General Assembly, if both the House and Senate pass it, see if it's worthwhile of funding. But it would set up 5 different research components that would be cutting-edge research, as would be defined and set up through the Council of Post-Secondary Education, where they would look at it, set up a process, and look at potential research in all types of areas. It just doesn't have to be medical or biomedical. I think of Morehead State University and their aerospace program, which was a component of the success that those 2 students had at Gatton. Last year, we had the discussion between Murray, University of Louisville, and Northern Kentucky about cybersecurity. We have Eastern, who is one of the few aviation accredited FAA programs for a flight school. Could you see them and Morehead maybe working together on aerospace and aviation and some research project that they would bring? Or, as I spoke to Dr. Capilouto, maybe there's another collaborative between Northern and UK with Alzheimer's research, one of the number 1 leading areas where people are looking to put research dollars in. And most recently, I sat down with a lady who I know her husband, but don't really know her, but Miss Paula Grisanti, who was talking about, again, what she had done with the University of Louisville, her group, and Moorhead, and their aerospace program about doing various biomedical research programs at the International Space Station. And if she had $300,000, she knew, or she could draw down over $3 million to continue this type of biomedical research. These are examples of what could be. I don't know if they will be, but what I know, being somewhat of a country boy, you can't catch a fish until you cast something into the water. I've never seen them jump in my boat. So this is an attempt to go fishing in the area of something that won't affect Manchester or Clay County, not for Eastern Kentucky, not for Northern Kentucky, Louisville, or Lexington, or Western Kentucky, but for the state as a whole. We have funded the Markey Cancer Center 2 years ago, and it is bringing hope to people who have cancers that don't have to leave this state to go to an MD Anderson, a Sloan Kettering, a Cleveland Clinic, or a Mayo. Why can we not create the dynamics that other states have done that would not benefit an area, but benefit the whole state? That's the hope of this bill, that we will go forward, create the process that is set out in this legislation, and then potentially fund it. And the money's generated off of this, lawyers will use this term, the corpus or the principal, the interest, are the monies that will seed the research in the future. Now, we want it to be successful. We want to see that it brings in other dollars. We want to know that it's cutting edge. A few years ago, we put $1 million into a genomic study. Last year, we passed a bill that used biomarkers because, Mr. Chairman, we may have the same cancer. They will use the drug on you. It will be effective, but on me, it will not. But they can determine this because now we do genomic sequencing and know what will be beneficial to you, but not me. These are the types of investments I believe we need to make to take us into a 21st century provider of healthcare, but economics and exploration, and as well as the research components that you're seeing many states go after. And it will totally change the educational and economic dynamics of this state. That is the hope of this bill. At the end of the 5 years, it will be reviewed to make sure all those metrics are being met, because genomic sequencing, as we put money into a few years ago, is no longer cutting edge. It would take months. Now it takes 15 minutes to be able to do the things that I've just spoken of. And so with that, that is the essence and the structure of the bill. And if there are questions, I would gladly accept them.
Thank you, President Stivers, for that excellent presentation. We have one question so far. Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And President Stivers, if you want fish to jump into the boat, come down to West Kentucky, and that will happen.
I forgot about that. You have Asian carp, and I have seen that happen. I'm not trying to mislead the committee. I have seen fish jump into the boat in that circumstance.
Is that through dynamite?
No, I've seen a few green corn cobs waved over the river and they jump because they got trained. But country people have to understand that one.
Chasing squirrels now. My question has to do with on page 3 of 3, line 10, on the economic development part of accessing these funds. What do you envision being? Would it be something that maybe through research, a product that would be developed that could be marketed, something like that?
And this is why I used, thank you, Senator Carroll, I wanted to use the example, and it's an example. I don't know if it'll come to fruition, but we're talking about Moorhead, and I think I'm right because one of their mathematicians developed a mathematical equation to do long-term deep space tracking that they have now have a big presence of NASA at Moorhead. And I believe several years ago, Senator West, I think it was then Senator Bunning, Senator McConnell, and Congressman Rogers that got them a big dish. And if you haven't been to Moorhead, that dish is probably as big as this room. And so through that, they have been able to develop differing products and a presence. I think Ragent is now there that is in this field. Those are the types of researches where you may link aerospace and aviation to come up with some new type of, and maybe engineering, it could be 3 schools, to create a new material that would be good in all circumstances. That, there is so much out there. I could go on for hours talking about the potentials that may arrive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Senator Givens.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And President Stivers, wonderful vision. You and I have discussed this on and off over the years, and it's a testament to you and your passion for this state as a whole that this has come to fruition. To see what we loosely talked about in multiple conversations actually take form as words on paper is even more impressive, because between you and the bill drafter and the folks that have worked on this, I really like the approach you're taking. And so we have the endowment, if we choose to make one in the budget process, and you refer to that as the corpus. The interest comes off of that, is divided into these 5 accounts. You don't specify, and I'm confident that CPE, as I'm reading it, CPE will have the regulatory authority to promulgate the regs to divide it equally or divide it in some way that they see fit. Most likely the interest will come off in some portions equally into these 5 accounts. And then you go on in subsection 3 on page 2 to talk about that the money is going to be seed money to try to actually draw down the large dollars.
That's right.
Beautiful, wonderful vision. And so that endowment stays there, and every quarter, I think it is, the interest comes off and goes into those accounts, and it does that over a 5-year period. These approved consortium arrangements, collaborative arrangements, are approved for that 5-year period and can be renewed again one time for 5 more years, at which points they should be mature by then, mature enough to move on into a commercialization sort of phase, I presume. The only thing I'll ask you to think about, and I'm a huge fan of what you're doing, whether we do it on this side or the House side or in a conference discussion, it might be nice to add some language about council preference being given to unique collaborative arrangements, in the sense of we don't end up with school X and school Y winning all 5 times. Because innovation happens when multiple minds and multiple talents come together, we may want to put a little safeguard in to ensure that we have unique collaborative arrangements across these 5 opportunities. Huge fan, thank you.
Please proceed.
If I can, Senator Givens, look, this is a thought process, and there will be people, Senator Carroll has asked something. I know he's into nuclear research and the nuclear issue. And it may be something of that way that you may have a third-party entity, but at least you're going to have at least 2 of the universities collaborating on doing something in an area. I don't want to in any way think that I have pride of authorship. I'm looking for innovation. I'm looking for input. I want to see this be a successful program that creates and makes a difference. And so I'm very open to anything that can make this process, this function, the ability to research in various areas as expansive as it can be. And so I have no problem with that. Because, and I'll say this, one other thing. Some of the public universities have said, do we get to apply for this? There's nothing that can keep them from it. There's nothing from NASA being a third partner with U of L and Moorhead, or Eastern and Moorhead, or somebody in the AI area with Northern Louisville and Murray. That will be the strength of their application that CPE would look at, about what other dollars and expertise they could bring to the table. So ideas are great.
Senator Funky Fromeyer.
President Stivers, I love this. It is so inspiring. And thank you for mentioning, and my question is kind of on page 3, but That collaboration that we've seen between the University of Kentucky and Northern Kentucky University for our med students has been fantastic. And the other piece that we see is the wet lab that will be funded in Covington. So recognizing that we might be able to create a mini Boston in Covington, kind of that biomed corridor. How will that tie into potentially, and I think you were just now touching on it, so we could then potentially take these third-party interests that aren't one of the two universities and connect it to the expectation that these universities will collaborate. It'll be two institutions expected to collaborate with potentially outside resources.
At a minimum of two institutions.
At a minimum.
At
Good.
a minimum of two institutions. And the strength of their application, which we can sit here and deliberate, but this is why you place it with a group that will have operating abilities once we are adjourned sine die, to sit there and look at what can happen. It does not limit it. We don't want to be limiting, but we definitely do want to know that we are being responded to and doing things that are appropriate. We don't want to go off on wild journeys and chase squirrels anywhere, but it is something that you may have an outside entity that has expertise in this area and dollars that want to partner. And we'll use your example of Northern as well as the University of Kentucky, be it the medical center or the research of the engineering school, wherever it may be, to say, this is our application, this is who we're bringing to the table. And I think that would make it a stronger application.
Yeah, and we don't have fish that are leaping into your boat, but we do have an Alzheimer's and a dementia, and you're spot on and recognizing this couldn't happen soon enough. Thank you for bringing this.
Senator Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, President Stivers. Very exciting concept. And question I have for you may sound rhetorical. It's not meant that, because you've kind of answered it. But in terms of funding streams, this certainly looks like it lends itself to public-private partnerships. Is that what we'll be looking at as a funding stream?
It could, but understand, we want to be able to, or I wanted to be able to, and I'm asking this group to be able to, we want to review in 5 years. We want to make sure they're doing things, and I use that genomic sequencing as 5 years ago, that was cutting edge, but we all know, being around here, that what's cutting edge today, 5 years from now, may be totally antiquated. And so public-private partnerships would be something that I think bringing dollars to the table, bringing outside expertise, would, again, depending on what it is, could very much strengthen the application.
Well, certainly the research aspect of it is paramount. But what really caught my attention was the economic impact this could potentially have. And I think anytime you develop those kind of partnerships from the private sector that has a need for their research and assistance, I think this would really fuel this and move it forward. But I commend you for bringing the bill, and thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'll be the final question in this segment. Senator Stivers, if you could kind of comment on this. You don't need to look it up in the bill, but it's page 1, section 1B, where we talk about the endowed fund. And so we're not talking about just state dollars or federal dollars flowing into the endowment fund. The way you've set this up is private money can also flow in.
It could actually, in theory, could work either way. If you were to say there's 5 tranches there, you could have an outside entity, or you could have an individual that says, where you're going right now and what you're doing, we want to, and let's say that you do $10 million, it generates $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a year, and somebody says, well, we want to put $500,000 on top of that. They can donate directly into the interest, that we would say, or they see this endowment, this principle, this corpus, and say, we like the research and we want to make sure there's a bigger funding stream. We want to put into that on the bigger side, the corpus side, the pot side, to where it would have increased revenues on an annualized basis. Neither one are precluded or prohibited, but understanding that at a point in time, if the research is no longer productive in doing other things or being what we would think or what they should think is cutting edge, those monies still stay there and can be reapportioned or redesignated to a new research project upon application.
Yeah, that's the beauty of what I see here is you have these testamentary gifts and bequests could go to the corpus and be last in perpetuity,
Totally.
right? And so that's pretty exciting for somebody who's wanting to leave a gift by will. So excited about that. Great bill. Any other questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, at this time, the floor is open for a motion on SB 1. We have a motion from Senator Givens. We have a second from Senator Meredith. Please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Aye.
Senator Funky Fromeyer. Senator Givens. Senator Higdon. Senator Meredith. Senator Neal. Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to explain my I vote.
Please proceed.
President Stivers, this is indeed a visionary bill. And in my view, this year, this actually should be Senate Bill 1. This is what Senate Bill 1 should look like coming from the Kentucky State Senate. You know, as a lifelong Kentuckian, it's always been my observation that we talk a lot about being champions in the arena of athletics. And while there's nothing wrong about that, I wish we talked more about being champions in the arena of academics. That's really what I want for Kentucky, is to be an academic champions. And that's what this bill really does. It changes, it at least begins to change the mindset of Kentucky in terms of, let's talk about being academic champions. This is just a great bill, and it certainly has my unconditional support. Like references made by Senator Givens, I don't want to water this bill down with floor amendments. I want this to go on through. I want to ask you this because we are policymakers, and each and every year, life changes, and we have to adapt to those changes. On page 2, lines 20 to 23, where we talk
Senator
about
Thomas, this is vote explanation.
I am. That's okay. I'm explaining my. You asked for a 5-year review, but I'm suggesting that at least once every year we adopt this bill and move forward, that we at least get a update during the interim through the Committee of Education to see where it's going, because we should at least offer policy mechanisms of what we can do to at least give the council some recommendations. We are policymakers. They want to do more in space exploration. They want to do more in the area of Alzheimer's suggestions. So I'd like to at least ask you to consider having at least a sometime in July or August with the interim. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I went more than 3 minutes, but I do vote aye.
Thank you.
Senator Tishner. Senator Williams. Senator Wilson. Senator Wise. Chair West.
Aye. Senate Bill 1 passes unanimously with favorable expression. Thank you, President Stivers, for the presentation. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
thank you. Next up on the docket, we have, we move into the bills for discussion only segment. If Eastern Kentucky University would come forward with your guests. While you're coming up, I'm just going to make an announcement for this segment. There have been a few bills in this session that touch on the same topic, and those are postgraduate programs at the state's comprehensive universities. KRS 164295 limits the offerings at these institutions, and we have invited their sponsors and these universities to present on those restrictions and how they have proposals to open up those restrictions. Whenever you're ready, if you want to announce your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am David Mead, Speaker Pro Tem of the House, and I have with me President David McFadden of EKU. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. What we're here today to talk to you about is legislation that adds permissive language that will allow EKU to offer an osteopathic medical degree. And we continue to hear from our constituents, especially in rural communities, that we are struggling with access to health care. During COVID, we saw that come to light, especially in those rural communities. And what we did as a General Assembly is we as a General Assembly challenged our universities to come up with solutions. And that's what EKU has done with this. They have done a lot of research. They've done a lot of studying. Over the past 2 to 3 years, President McFadden has even talked to private organizations about how we could partner possibly in doing this program. And after all those discussions, this is the best avenue that they have come up with in order to push physicians out to rural communities. And that is one of the reasons that I have become so passionate about this bill and stood behind this bill, is because the president has assured me that in this program, one of the requirements will be that those physicians go to those rural communities to help us in those communities to get that access to health care and to have those healthcare workers that we need in those communities. And before I proceed any further, I'm going to turn it over to President McFadden to allow him to have a few words and give his presentation.
President McFadden, if you would pause there. This is House Bill 407, and all these bills are in your folders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to members of the committee. It is good to be here today, and I will say that on the heels of the passage of Senate Bill 1 in this committee, I am excited to see this committee embracing innovation in this space, embracing the opportunity to lean in and move Kentucky forward as we think about making a better Kentucky for tomorrow. For those that don't know my history, I'm a native Kentuckian. I'm a first-generation college student. I'm an alum of Eastern Kentucky University, and I sit with another fellow Kentuckian who we have the distinct privilege of being the only two native Kentuckians and native alums leading our institutions today. I do think that as we think about this opportunity, we can lean into the notion that we're trying to carve out a space to meet the needs of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Over the last 20 years, as I've been involved in watching this body work, I've heard on regular occasions that our institutions need to differentiate, that we must be focused on what are the needs of Kentucky, and we need to make sure that our missions align. I'll give a quick, mouse is not working here. I want to give a quick snapshot of where we stand today in Kentucky, and many on the committee are going to know better than I do who are working in this space, the sheer need that we have as it relates to physicians in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. As you can see, between 2019 and 2022, the number of physicians in Kentucky decreased by 590. We rank 40th amongst U.S. states in primary care physicians. 94% of our counties, from Paducah to Pikeville, from Covington to Williamsburg, are underserved or not served at all in primary care physicians. A third of our doctors today are within retirement eligibility age. 40% of our state and our constituents live in rural communities, yet only 17% of our primary care physicians practice in those communities. We have 3 medical schools in this state, and they do wonderful work. But there were nearly 14,000 applications to those 3 institutions last year, and 510 students got in. As we look at other states similar to us, whether it be Alabama or South Carolina or Louisiana, what we see is that those states have 4 or more medical schools trying to meet the needs of the healthcare needs in their communities. Thinking about what we're trying to achieve here, we hope it is aligned with the vision of this body, and that is alleviating the Commonwealth's growing shortage of primary care physicians, training doctors for chronically underserved communities, and doing it in the most affordable ways, and creating pathways for our students, Kentucky students, to pursue healthcare professions and provide additional opportunities here. At Eastern Kentucky University, I am proud to say that per capita we educate more Kentuckians than any institution in this state, and we hold the #1 position for those Kentuckians who graduate going back to work in our communities and making a difference each and every day. Talk a little bit about the details as we think about what is DO and what are we doing in this space. 25% of U.S. medical students train in osteopathic medicine today. Enrollment has boomed over the last decade, with a 68% increase in enrollment in that space. In the last 5 years, the number of DOs in the U.S. has increased by 30%, and nearly 57% of them are practicing in primary care. You can see that the proposal that we have is a 4-year doctoral program that is a 2-year in-classroom experience and a 2-year clinical rotation. I'm proud today that Greg Gerard, the president of Baptist Health Richmond, is here with me today. He also represents the Baptist Health System. And we have a commitment there to make sure that we will have those rotations as much as possible here in Kentucky, making sure that those students have a chance to have their residency and clerkship here so that they stay here. Why are we ready to do this? Well, we've got a 150-year history this year of providing educational excellence in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We also have almost 70 years of leaning in to the healthcare needs of Kentucky. From psychology to occupational therapy, and I've got some of my occupational therapy folks here with me today. They're in Frankfort. To public health, to exercise and sports science, to dietetics, to recreational therapy, paramedicine, biological sciences, and Kentucky's 100% pass rate NCLEX nursing program. We are proud to lean into this space, and we feel like a DO program definitely is an additive to the work that we're already doing. Talking really quickly about affordability and impact, that is something that is front of mind for me. Accessible and affordable higher education is something that is paramount importance to EKU. You can see that in 2022, the average debt of someone who's graduating from medical school, just over $200,000, and a 20-year commitment to pay that off. Physicians, though, support our economy in this state. They support almost 100,000 jobs, and the revenue impact is nearly $600 million a year, and have a total economic impact of over $15 billion. With each physician coming into our economy, we're adding nearly $2 million in economic activity. That is an economic impact for Kentucky, and it is something that we feel like is going to move the state forward. With that, Mr. Chair, that is the end of the presentation, and I yield any questions.
Thank you so much. I'm apologizing because I was supposed to tell you before you started you had about 15 minutes, but you were on track miraculously, and so we're going to do for the other people, we're going to try to stay at about 15 minutes per presentation and allow 5 minutes for questions afterwards. Thank you so much. Excellent presentation. First up, we have Senator Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Fadden. Obviously, as a former rural hospital CEO, I'm very interested in this, and those numbers certainly are staggering when you consider it. Two challenges I see, and one that you've already mentioned, is the residency requirement. And presently, I think nationally, we're at like 0.85 residency slots available. Have you had any conversations as to how to address that in the future?
Yeah, I think as we look at those opportunities, there's no doubt that there's limited space there, and I think that it will require a commitment from our hospital partners. And it just so happens that the Kentucky Hospital Association is here today, and we've had conversations with multiple members of that organization. It is a shift in the modality of creating that teaching environment, but there is a desire to partner with us. The one thing that I will say is that getting deep into those conversations and truly being able to see where the investment to support a program like this from the private sector would be, we first have to remove the hurdle that there is an explicit prohibition that we cannot do this. And so as it pertains to this bill, House Bill 407, it simply opens the door that we may be able to pursue this, and I think it will allow us to go much deeper in those conversations and making sure those residencies and those clerkships are available.
Well, I certainly think it's an investment in rural Kentucky. We measure the cost of doing nothing and the lack of primary care physicians in rural Kentucky, and you see our healthcare outcomes, and obviously there's a staggering price associated with this. So I think this can win. I think the other thing you have to address, though, going forward, getting physicians in rural Kentucky is not always commensurate with keeping people in rural Kentucky, and I think we have to address the payment disparity between urban versus rural, but I think we've got some time to work on that, and certainly would welcome the opportunity to work with you on this. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. McFadden, you spoke a little bit about the other medical programs that you have at the university. Tell me how, with the OM program, how would that supplement what you all are doing? How would it interact? How would it make those programs better also?
I think the addition of a DO program, which would bring that ultimate kind of final step in that healthcare paradigm degree to campus, I think that you start to be able to create a clinical experiential experience on campus, where all of a sudden we've got a physician, an attending physician, a nursing student, a mental health professional, a dietitian, all working around a clinical setting, learning how to take care of a patient who has all of those needs. And so right now, as we think about these other degrees that we do, they do that. But the attending physician part is missing from that equation. So the person who is probably ultimately going to make the call on what's going to happen is not in that room when that experience is going on. So that is one of the most exciting things that our faculty, our deans, our academic units are excited about, is having really the whole experience right there in that laboratory experience for those clinical trainings that would be going on there on campus, or in those virtual trainings where they bring back notes from those rotations and then are able to kind of unpack those.
Okay, thank you. And just a quick follow-up, if I might, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed.
Ongoing funding, will there be any needs from the General Assembly to support this program as we move into the future?
I will say that the requirements for an accredited program requires an escrowed amount of funds be deposited into an account. It is a mathematical calculation on the number of students that you will have in order to hold those funds until you graduate your first class. The only need that we will have will be some support to park those funds for the period of time that would need to be there until we were accredited. Those funds could then return to the general fund for use of other purpose, but we fully expect this program to be self-sustaining.
This is exciting, and I know in West Kentucky we have hospitals interested in resident programs, so I hope to see this initiated and move forward.
And I will say, Senator Carroll, that we have been in conversations with many of our sister institutions, and so the ability to place those pre-med students into those rotations and get them back into your communities are something we're going to work on. And I think you'll hear that that message resonated with other presentations that come today.
Thank you. That concludes the questions in this segment. Really appreciate the excellent presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda, we have Murray State University and their contingent. Once again, what they're presenting on pertains to Senate Bill 189 and House Bill 400. Both of those bills should be in your packets. Once you are seated and comfortable, the floor is yours. You know the deal. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Richard Heath, 2nd House District, Mayfield, Kentucky. Have all of Graves County, parts of McCracken County. Allow my guests to introduce themselves.
Yes, I'm Bob Jackson, President of Murray State University.
Brian Parr, Dean of the Hudson School of Agriculture at Murray State University.
And as most of you know, that House Bill 400 simply amends the KRS 164.295 to allow Murray State University to have a doctorate of veterinary medicine and establish a school of veterinary medicine. Enjoys the sponsorship and primary co-sponsor of our floor leader, Stephen Rudy, Speaker Pro Tem David Mead, and Majority Whip Jason Nemus, also the representative from Murray, Mary Beth Imes. Then Chair of the House Education Committee, Representative Timpson, and then many more. The bill passed out of the House 82-6, overwhelming bipartisan support. So I'm going to turn the rest of the program over to these guys and let them fill in the blanks.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Chair Heath, thank you. Members of the committee, we appreciate it very much. Senate leaders who are here. And first, before I start with a few remarks, and then Dean Parr has a presentation, I want to thank President Stivers for Senate Bill 1 and your vote on that. I think that is what we should be doing in the Commonwealth. It's an innovative approach, and I think what Murray State's trying to do fits the same bill. We have many partnerships already with universities, and I can see many more in the future. I want to thank Chair Heath, the sponsor of House Bill 400, and I want to thank Senator Jason Howell, the Senate complementing bill sponsor, Senate Bill 189, that do the exact same thing. There's a number of co-sponsors in regard to Senate Bill 189. Many of you have signed onto that bill, and I appreciate it very much as we try to move forward in this particular space as well. First, some very quick history, and I've had an opportunity to share this with many of you over the last many months. In 1973, over 50 years ago, our Board of Regents passed a unanimous resolution to build a veterinary school at Murray State University, over 50 years ago. 50 years have passed. Nothing has been done in that regard. And in August of 2023, our Board of Regents passed another resolution unanimously as it relates to supporting a school of veterinary medicine at Murray State University. So we've been at this for 51 years. And we're the only institution in the Commonwealth that has pursued this particular initiative 2 different times in front of the legislature. In August, we formed a task force to assist us with this plan. We completed a feasibility study. It's important to note we have one of the most significant veterinarian-related assets in the Commonwealth and in this country, the Breathitt Veterinary Center, located in Hopkinsville. Some of you have toured the facility, but it is a tremendous asset for us to leverage School of Veterinary Medicine. This work of 50 years, and especially during the past year, resulted in these 2 bills. As you know, it is simply authorizing language. It's amending a current statute that's been amended several times to allow Murray State University to offer a doctorate in veterinary medicine. We have numerous supporters of House Bill 400 and Senate Bill 189 and for a School of Veterinary Medicine at Murray State University, for that matter. And they include, and I'm going to go through this very quickly, Mr. Chairman, veterinarians, major employers of veterinarians, worldwide leaders in this field, state agricultural leaders, Kentucky pork producers, Kentucky Poultry Federation, the Louisville Zoo, Kentucky Dairy Council, representatives of the thoroughbred industry, numerous chambers of commerce who understand, especially in rural Kentucky, that agriculture is economic development and we need to do more in this respective area. Area development districts, cities, counties, county farm bureaus, members of our statewide task force that we put in place many months ago, David Beck, who is CEO of Kentucky Venues. Mr. Beck testified in 1974 in front of the legislature for a School of Veterinary Medicine at Murray State University. Mr. Wayne Hunt on the Ag Development Board, a successful ag executive in the Commonwealth, among many others. As everyone on this panel knows, we have an alarming shortage of veterinarians in Kentucky. The USDA reports there's a shortage in 86 of our 120 counties, or 72% of our counties. It's especially a problem in rural Kentucky. It's especially a problem among large animal veterinarians. We do not have a School of Veterinary Medicine in Kentucky. Again, as everyone knows, we're one of over 20 states which does not. There are only 33 accredited vet schools in the entire country. We've been working to be part of the solution for over 50 years. And as I stated earlier, in fact, we're really the only university who has moved this initiative forward during that period of time, twice. We've worked hard. We're trying to, as we've been charged by the General Assembly, find a distinctive niche and need in regard to meeting workforce and economic development matters in our respective parts of the Commonwealth and the Commonwealth as a whole. And I think we have started that process very well. And also we're trying to assist in taking care of the largest collective industry in Kentucky, and that is agriculture. Lastly, during the past many months, I want to thank all of you. We've had a chance to visit with everyone here, and thank you for the time today. And with that, Dean Parr has a brief presentation for the committee as well. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I will move quickly. As President Jackson mentioned, our feasibility study kicked into action just quickly after our board decided that we would look at this. And we got the results back. And of course, we have a very strong agriculture program there at Murray State, over 1,400 students that are studying agriculture at Murray State. So our authors determined that we were well positioned to meet this need of rural veterinarians in our Commonwealth. We have a system across the Commonwealth currently where we reach all 120 counties through dual credit in agriculture. That system is going to be very important to making this effort, not just to build a vet school, but an effort to create veterinarians that will return and stay in those rural communities. And I'll revisit that in just a few minutes. Of course, we see that there's a need that's not being met there that's been covered before. We have a limited number of practicing veterinarians in our state. We have enough veterinarians in some urban areas, but we have a complete lack of veterinarians in many of the more rural areas of our state. So we currently are enjoying this contract with Auburn University that's been in place many years, and we understand that contract has been beneficial. But we see as we move forward that the future of veterinary medicine is only going to grow in the need of veterinarians. According to our authors, it's going to move up at a fast and alarming pace. And so being able to turn out these veterinarians that can come back to work with our rural practices. And sometimes we talk about large animal or food animal, but primarily rural practices involve large animals, small animals, every animal in the rural areas. And so it is more of a rural need than it is a large animal or small animal per se. The problems that we see happening is, and especially I would say that our dairy herds are very much in danger. Dairy herds require intense veterinary care and monitoring. And really without that available to them, our producers are forced to move more into becoming self-taught, self-learned veterinarians in their own field. And in many ways they do a great job of it, but that's not really what we need to be happening in the industry. So currently 32 colleges, schools of veterinary medicine in the United States, 22 states without one. Here's a picture of our state. You can see there's quite a region there without a school of veterinary medicine. As I learned more about the OD school, I realized that the clinical distributed model of veterinary medicine education is the OD school of vet med education. It is very much the same. It's this distributed learning instruction model where the students come to the university for 2 or 3 years of instruction, and then they spend the final years out in the field with veterinarians in their practice, learning, being immersed in the practice that potentially they'll step into after they finish their education and be able to step into practice day one ready as veterinarians. It's tailored for the students' needs, the students' specific focus. And of course, what we see there is the ability for our students to be involved in industry, top-notch and cutting-edge procedures that are present in our vet offices across the state without having to replicate that and bear the expense of replicating that and maintain that and bring it up to speed every year on campus. So it really does a lot of things positive for our students, and in addition to that, it saves a lot of money in the construction of this type of a veterinary school, approximately $150 million in savings as opposed to the traditional model of building a veterinary teaching hospital. It's very important to notice that our school would be accredited in the same way as any other veterinary school would be. The licensure exam would be the same for veterinarians that graduate from this school as it would be from any current veterinary school. Over the last 20, 25 years, we've seen 6 or 7 schools come online, and by far the majority of those schools, all but one, have used this distributed model. Here's just a few on the list here: Texas Tech, Clemson, University of Arizona, of course LMU that we're fairly familiar with, but Calgary and Long Island University to round out the list. So our vision, as I mentioned before, is this distributed model with a class size of about 70 students per year that we'd be able to educate through this school, with a minimum of 50 of those being Kentucky residents. We currently have in place a $4.2 million scholarship initiative to attract students from those rural areas. And I'll visit that in just a second. We currently have this support structure in place with our Equine Education Center, our Certified Angus Herd, our University Swine Unit. Of course, Breathitt Veterinary Center has been mentioned already here today, that would be an integral part to this. We currently have a very large pre-vet vet tech teaching program there on campus that would feed directly into this. And of course, we already have several veterinarians and veterinary practice and diagnostic technicians already on staff that could take on some teaching load into addition to what they do right now. Of course, Pre-Vet Vet Tech, one of our largest programs of 450 plus students. And there's just some pictures of campus and some things that our students get to experience every day. For example, here's a picture from our surgery lab. These surgery labs are already there. They're already in place. Some of these things that could be integral into this pursuit of a vet school is currently in place. So we are well poised, I think, to do it. But this is really the most important thing I feel as an educator about the proposal. It's not just, and I've been asked, do you think just putting a vet school in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, does that fix our problem? Well, no, I don't think it just fixes our problem. I think it requires this grassroots approach. And I mentioned before, we have dual credit in all of our counties in agriculture. And so we're reaching high school students in agriculture. We have over 1,000 that are enrolled right now in Murray State University for college credit in agriculture across the Commonwealth. We need to identify those students as early as 10th grade to say, here's a student from a rural community that has a passion for animal agriculture that may or may not have considered vet medicine as a career or even as a possibility, and we need to help them make that possible. We can do that through this dual credit system that reaches into those high schools to deliver these science credits and these agriculture credits to help us bolster that pipeline with capable vet school applicants. Once we do that, we have this scholarship incentive. And really with scholarships, you can target groups. You can target rural students. You can target whatever students that you're looking for to help and give aid as they go through this education. And so we can have committed to putting this endowment toward rural students studying veterinary medicine with an emphasis on large animal, food animal care. Another thing I want to point out is I work with vet school advisors at Murray State. They do their very best to prepare our students to be admitted into vet schools across the country. But they're doing it largely based on word of mouth and sometimes, frankly, a shot in the dark, because they don't know exactly what those vet school admission boards are looking for every day. But if we have one here in the Commonwealth, we will be able to better define that process for our students. As a sophomore in high school, this is step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of how you can become a doctor of veterinary medicine. We propose this at a lower tuition rate than any of our students in any state right now are paying for a vet med education. It'll come in a tuition savings, reduce the debt burden, considerably less than out of state and exponentially less than what our students are paying that are currently in private schools. We recognize that not only is this an impact on the vet med community on being able to provide animal health, but it's also an economic impact that would have on our state. We know that there are things that will come with this, that the ripple effect is almost impossible to measure. But at Murray State, students are our focus. We focus in agriculture primarily on a large group of first-generation college students from rural areas that their parents couldn't tell them a whole lot about the university setting, but when they got there, we try to make it home for them. We try to make it a place that is inviting and a place that they can step from and be successful into employment, and I think our track record for that certainly speaks for itself. I'd be happy to entertain questions.
Thank you so much. Before we start on questions, we do have a gentleman signed up to speak in favor. Dr. Jim Weber, are you here?
We're neutral.
Oh, okay. Neutral. Please step forward. Sorry, I didn't have your position on my sheet. When you're ready, please state your name for the record, then proceed.
I am Jim Weber. I am the Governmental Relations Chair for our Governmental Relations Committee, and I'm also a former president of the KVMA, the Kentucky Veterinary Medical Association. Joining me is Dr. Wade King, and he is a practitioner here in Frankfort, and he is the president-elect of our association. And I would like to point out that the KVMA represents over 90% of the Kentucky veterinarians. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to express KVMA's concerns regarding SB 189 and HB 400 and the current veterinary school instructional model proposed by Murray State University. We have not taken a formal position on these bills, as we understand we are only in the initial stages in a long process of possibly establishing a veterinary school in Kentucky. We appreciate that Murray State has a successful history operating pre-veterinary, veterinary technology, and agricultural programs, and has been a good friend to the veterinary profession. However, we have serious concerns with Murray State's veterinary college model presented in their feasibility study and presentations, as we would with any institution proposing the same or a similar model. Chief among our concerns is Murray's plan to use a distributive model of instruction, a rather recent method of clinical instruction for veterinary students. In Murray's presentation, they mentioned 6 schools using the distributive model. Of those 6 schools, only 2 have achieved full accreditation. 1 school has gone far enough along and graduated their first class to possibly get full accreditation, but as part of full accreditation, 80% of their students must pass the NAVLE, which is the National Licensing Exam, and they failed to do that. So they will continue under provisional accreditation. 2 of the other schools have not been open long enough to achieve full accreditation. 1 school has not even opened, and I think will open in Clemson University. I think they'll take their first class in 2025 or 2026. So as you can see, this model is a relatively new model. In the distributive model, students receive a substantial part of their clinical instruction off campus sites such as private practices and other entities rather than at traditional on-site veterinary hospitals. Veterinarians and students involved in the distributive model have seen inconsistency in training. While one site may offer an excellent experience, another may not. Not all private practices would want to participate in the program, and not all practices will meet the rigorous standards set by the AVMA Council on Education, the accrediting body for all American veterinary colleges, as well as many foreign schools. Moreover, the distributive model requires students to be constantly changing sites. Lincoln Memorial University, a distributive model veterinary school, has their students, and this is in their last year of school, participate in 12 4-week clinical rotations their final year. Students are moving and establishing a new place to live and work every 4 weeks. Another concern we have with Murray's proposal are plans to have a 3-year program. To meet accreditation standards, all schools must have 9 semesters of instruction. Most veterinary schools spread this out over 4 years, giving students a summer break due to the intensity of the instruction and an opportunity to work and make a little money, and/or being able to experience an optional veterinary opportunity. At least 2 schools that I am aware of, University of Tennessee and Michigan State University, tried a 3-year program only to abandon it due to the stress put on their students. Other concerns we have are possible underestimates of faculty and funding necessary for operating a high quality college of veterinary medicine. We currently have an excellent contract space program with Auburn and Tuskegee, high quality and long established veterinary colleges, which has produced many of the state's veterinarians over the past 70 plus years. 57% of Auburn graduates that came from Kentucky returned to Kentucky upon graduation. Nearly 75% returned within 8 years of graduation. Most state schools do not have such an enviable record. I know my own personal alumni, University of Ohio State, they only returned 30% of their graduates to Ohio. Auburn only has around 40% of their Alabama students stay in Alabama after graduation. We currently have if Kentucky opens a veterinary school, we will very likely be giving up these spaces when currently enrolled students graduate, as resources would and should be directed to an in-state school when opened. The KVMA wants to ensure that any new scenario that might replace our current system will produce equally highly qualified veterinarians. We agree with Murray State that the rural veterinary shortage issue needs to be addressed. The Kentucky Department of Agriculture recently released a report from the Veterinary Shortage Working Group, a group of diverse stakeholders including producers, veterinarians, university personnel, and government representatives. This group worked for over 18 months and developed many possible solutions. It was concluded that it would take many approaches, programs, and organizations along with time to address the shortage issue. Thank you for your time to express just a few of KVMA's concerns.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. We really appreciate it, and guest, we really appreciate that. If you don't mind, we're going to have Murray State come back up, and then we're going to open up the floor for questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for the presentation today. Very supportive. In terms of if you were able to secure this and Murray State proceeds with the vet school, describe for me partnerships with colleges and universities that would take place. I know you talked a little bit about high schools and, Taylor County School District. We're doing an ag tech program and trying to get in also this space with some pre-vet stuff there. So would just like to see the partnerships of what you're looking at and how that would be.
Let me say this initially. Senator Wise, thank you for that question. So I've talked to, I think, nearly all of the public university presidents in regard to this initiative in detail. I've talked to many others across the Commonwealth. Our goal is to partner with every college and university in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So if there is a student who is academically eligible, who can go to vet school and wants to go to vet school, they should be able to go to a vet school and reside here in the Commonwealth and hopefully stay in the Commonwealth. And we would do everything possible to ensure that. I had a conversation with Dr. Quarles just a few days ago in regard to partnering with the KCTCS system, the community college system, in order for that pipeline to occur too. So our goal is to partner with all of our peer institutions in the Commonwealth. Dr. Parr, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo that. Absolutely open to any type of collaboration. I mean, there's no doubt that animal agriculture is different in different parts of the Commonwealth, and no doubt with our regionals and with UK and the others being spread across the state, there's areas that we may need to lean on those other universities to help us with the resources that could be necessary to provide our students with the best experience. So, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
I understand.
how much would it cost for an in-state student when you do this versus what we pay for the out-of-state students now?
So what we are modeling and what we've been looking at for months is something that would be less than what students are paying today to go to an out-of-state school of veterinary medicine. And I want to say this, and I want to say it loudly. Our partnership in Kentucky and our partnership at Murray State University with Auburn University's veterinarian school is excellent. And many of our students go there. And this is not about Auburn University, this discussion. It's about Kentucky. And we appreciate their service, and we appreciate what they do, and we appreciate their continued service in that regard. It's an excellent school of veterinary medicine as well. So it would be considerably less. And 53% of the students that graduate from Murray State University each year graduate with no student debt. 53%. I wish it was 100. And since I've been in this job, it's gotten to a better position in place because we're raising a significant amount of money that we're putting towards scholarships and need-based scholarships, which will further carry forward into a potential school of veterinary medicine if we're fortunate enough to make that happen. As Dean Parr has already stated, we have one generous gift of in excess of $4.2 million to help us with those students in order that we can target Kentucky students who want to practice in Kentucky and hopefully in rural Kentucky and hopefully in large animal practices. So that will help in this initiative as well. I see that continuing. And we're going through, lastly, Senator, and thank you for the question. Lastly, we're over 100 years old. We're going through a centennial capital campaign as we speak. And we've nearly reached our $100 million goal, or we're working toward reaching that very, very soon, I should say. We've raised $70-some million as of yesterday. And half of that, 50% of that, is set aside for need-based aid and scholarships. So we're going to continue what Murray State's been doing for a long time as it relates to helping our students, and especially our Kentucky students, go to whether it's a school of veterinary medicine or studying engineering or nursing or education for that matter. But thank you.
Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my first question, it'd probably be more appropriate for the gentleman from the KVMA, if I might.
Yes. Dr. Weber, if you could, sorry for the flip-flopping. Please proceed.
Dr. Weber, help me understand if there is a student from that graduates from one of these other programs, let's say Lincoln Memorial, and with the distributive program, would they be allowed to practice in the state of Kentucky? Would they be licensed?
As long as they pass the NAVLE, and Lincoln Memorial is a fully accredited university, veterinary school. So yes, short answer. Yes.
And they are a distributive model.
Yes.
And my understanding is UK has a contract with them. Is that accurate?
I don't know a lot of the detail, but I know Lincoln Memorial sends some of their students up to the pathology lab, to the veterinary diagnostic lab. They may have further programs with them, but I'm just not sure on that. I know that part of what any veterinary school has to do is show research, and I know they use UK as part of fulfilling that requirement from the accreditation process. So they may have, like I said, I'm only guessing, they may have some collaboration with the Gluck Equine Research Institute too, but I don't know.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate to see if there's anyone that can speak on behalf of UK, if Dean Cox is here or another representative?
That would be appropriate if she's here. Is anybody here from UK? There we go. This is the veterinary expert from the University of Kentucky.
I think Bart was looking around the room also.
Yeah, I was hoping someone was here. Chairman, for the record, I'm Bart Harden. I'm the Director of Government I'm Bart Harden. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the University of Kentucky. I know very little about our arrangements with LMU other than I think we do they do contract with us for some of the lab work that the gentleman was mentioning.
And I'm
But
getting-
beyond that, I don't know.
And I'm getting ready to help you because Senator Carroll, Dean Cox was in my office 2 days ago, and she corroborated Dr. Weber's testimony that they have a diagnostic contract where they send students from there to UK to fulfill that. It's a private contract.
Yes.
So I do know that exists. Other than that, I don't know.
Okay.
That's
So-
basically the sum total of what I know as well. Yeah.
Okay, so we already allow veterinarians that have gone through this distributive model to practice as long as they pass the test. We do that in Kentucky as it is. It's already established. UK is working with one of these facilities. So, and I guess the question, does UK have any objections to this happening at Murray State?
Thanks for the question, Senator. I will tell you where we have been from the beginning on this, as well as all the other proposals you have heard and are going to hear, I think, coming. The University of Kentucky has remained neutral on this. This is a fundamentally policy issue that the General Assembly is going to have to decide because it is a bit of a change to higher education reform. But I don't often quote President Capelluto, but I will in this instance. We're remaining neutral because his words, we are not going to step on anyone else's dream. And that's where we are, that's where we've been, and will continue to be on these issues.
Mr. Chairman, if I might
Please
continue.
proceed.
You know, with the KVMA, they spoke about a lot of possibilities, a lot of what ifs, what might happen, what could happen. And we know in this Commonwealth, we talk every day about shortages that we have, whether that be teachers, whether that be doctors, all elements of the medical field, we talk about shortages. We have, over recent years, we have begun looking at various options. We have expanded the scope of practice for nurse practitioners. We have teachers that have alternative ways to certify based on life experience. So we're either going to do one of two things. We're going to ignore the shortages that we have. And keep in mind, with our teachers and our medical fields, we're talking about humans. We're talking about humans that we are altering the way we approach, the way we feel, the way we meet the needs in our Commonwealth. We're altering those things. We're talking about animals today. Animals. I don't, for the life of me, understand why this would be an issue. If you have to pass a test to practice in the state of Kentucky, does it really matter which model it's by? As long as you can pass that test, then this state says that you can practice. If we don't think outside the box, if we're not willing to look at alternatives with treating animals, we're not going to get anywhere in this state. And I'm not trying to demean what Auburn does. Great program, nothing but good things to say about that. And that would still be an option for students if they choose that path. But if we're going to address this and we're going to get serious about it, we've got to stop protecting our turf, and we've got to start thinking outside the box and meeting the needs of this Commonwealth. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're here for as legislators. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Carroll. Thank you, Bart, for that impromptu.
Sorry, Bart.
Representative Heath, if you would step forward. We have no other questions from members of the committee at this time. Do you have any comments as far as wrapping it up?
Just a closing comment, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity. Many of you serve on the Senate Ag Committee, and we had the interim joint committee back in September. And we were presented some information, 38 seats at Auburn. There were 136 applications. Overall, Auburn has 130 seats total. And there were 1,217 applications for those 130 seats. I think that demonstrates the need for another school. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Representative Heath. Thank you to guests. I wouldn't want to leave out Senator Howe in his part in SB 189. Up next on the docket, we have, you're welcome, Senate Bill 201, Western Kentucky University, and Senator Givens presenting. Whenever you are settled, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss with you Senate Bill 201. It is truly an honor to appear before this committee, and I'm so appreciative of the conversations that we've had about the other two pieces of legislation, and we'll be talking about this one. If I could start with a brief moment of levity, however. Bart, I've got a cat that's not feeling well. If you're available afterwards, we'll talk about what you can do to help my cat. Okay?
Is that a wildcat?
Oh! Touche. Well said, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that a lot. Back to seriousness. It has been a wonderful committee meeting, and I think the passage of Senate Bill 1, Senator, as you indicated, is what we're here to do. I think that's a wonderful example of a chance for us to move the Commonwealth forward in ways that are visionary. And Chairman, I applaud you for gathering these three pieces for conversation only, and it had not struck me until you mentioned it that all three relate to KRS 164-295. And so it's very appropriate we're here to have this conversation. President McFadden spoke about the statutory prohibition that we have. And so as I indicated early, my appreciation for the depth of the conversation and each of you taking time to pay attention to this is sincere. I also want to acknowledge the role that all of our university presidents, be they the comprehensives or the research institutions, the vital role they play in leading their institutions, which moves this Commonwealth forward. I applaud them day in and day out. And if you ever have the chance to think about, pause for just a moment with me, if you ever have the chance to think about a job that's 24/7, 365, these presidents live on these campuses. They never clock out. The loads they carry is something that I can only start to imagine. And so I'm sincere in my appreciation to each of them for their leadership. What you've got in front of you with 201 is an example of us creating an opportunity for not just one institution, but any institution in the Commonwealth to pursue what we call R2 status. And I'm going to stop there and let my colleague that I have such high regard for, President Caboni, pick up the ball.
Good morning. Here we go. Good morning. I'm Tim Caboni, president of Western Kentucky University, and thank you, Chairman West, for having us, Senator Givens, and members of the committee for the opportunity to present today. I know some folks have referred to this as the WKU PhD bill. I'm going to try to paint for you a picture this morning of a broader regional strategy for South Central Kentucky. We're having tremendous growth in our area, and this is a way to not only boost but strategically lead that growth as a university. Now, we have some terrific demands in South Central Kentucky in our regional economy. During the last 30 years, Warren County's population grew by 72.6% to 134,000 citizens. And this astonishing growth is expected to continue for decades, with an estimated population increase of nearly 75,000 by 2050, landing at approximately 210,000 residents. This will elevate Warren County to the third largest in the state, only behind Jefferson and Fayette counties, the homes of Louisville and Lexington. The Bowling Green metro area is not only Kentucky's fastest growing area, but it also benefits from the greater Nashville metro area, which is one of the fastest growing economies in the nation. Entities are choosing to locate in Bowling Green due to the high cost of living in Nashville, among other challenges. And we're poised at WKU to shape the future of our city and our region, and to redefine the jobs and the economy and the companies we want to create and attract to the region. We know Bowling Green is a great college town, but we're working to make it a knowledge town, as Professor David Staley at Ohio State calls them. So what created this growth? 25 years ago, there was a vision to create a transpark. And during that time, almost 2,000 acres of land is now currently full. And manufacturing drove our economy. And some folks ask, what's the secret sauce? What I'm describing for you is not just the university, it's not just the county, it's the chamber, it's the economic development organization, it's the city, everybody rowing and pulling in the same direction. Now, at my investiture, which is like when you marry the university, 7 years ago, I talked about something called the Innovation Campus. And that's one of 4 main initiatives that I announced that day. It's one of the ways we demonstrate our commitment to research and through economic development in the region. Through our 285,000 square foot innovation campus, it offers state-of-the-art labs, equipment, collaborative workspaces, and access to faculty and resources. It has become the region's hub for economic development and innovation. And we partner every day with the county, the city, the Economic Development Corporation, the Chamber, to help attract new organizations and new companies to Bowling Green. It provides students with hands-on experience and career opportunities, and we're gaining attention from a number of leading companies, startups, subject matter experts who are attracted to be in Bowling Green. So in the past 3 years, numerous local, regional, national, and international organizations have chosen to locate part of their operations at the Innovation Campus. These are companies such as Holley Inc., Logan Aluminum, Real-Time Safety Solutions, Oriya Health, Lune, Bing AI, Uniquat, Adelphi Technologies, Accelerate KY, on and on and on. We also provide a home to, get this, a host of solopreneurs, not entrepreneurs, individuals who want to come co-locate and work with other interesting, smart people. We have over 250 individuals with access to our shared smart space. And we also host companies there as they build manufacturing in the area, including the group from Tyson that just cut the ribbon on building their plant. Now, I want to define for you what an R2 institution is. We have 2 R1 universities in the Commonwealth, University of Kentucky, University of Louisville. The Carnegie Classification of Institutions of Higher Education provides a framework for categorizing universities based on their research activity. Now, this classification plays a crucial role in defining the institutions, their research capabilities, and their contributions to advancing knowledge and creating knowledge. Carnegie classifies R2 institutions as doctoral universities with high levels of research, requiring them to award at least 20 research doctoral degrees annually, or 30-plus professional practice doctorates in at least 2 different programs, and to expend at least $5 million in total research each year. R1s are about theoretical research and a greater number of PhDs. But an R2 is really about applied research with a limited number of PhDs associated with the economy and the workforce needs of the area. And this is who WKU is today as an institution. R2 universities create opportunities to translate and apply narrowly focused basic research conducted at R1 universities by developing multidisciplinary, practical, and market-driven research in programs directly tied to industry and workforce needs. And as you can see here on the slide, every state surrounding Kentucky has at least one R2 university. Additionally, 80% of the nation's top 10 boom towns are within 50 miles of an R2 institution. So R2 universities also facilitate the transfer of knowledge from academia to industry, and partnerships create the development of practical applications for research findings. They serve as hubs for innovation and creativity, fostering an environment that encourages the development of new and innovative ideas, technologies, and solutions to address complex, regional, national, and real-world problems. So the research and innovation generated by R2s can have a significant economic effect, creating additional economic development by attracting funding, investments, and partnerships. And R2 institutions change the way in which faculty, students are attracted to the region. So I want to share with you a little bit about our total research and development numbers at WKU. We are emerging as the Commonwealth's first comprehensive university to be able to achieve R2 status. As you can see here, our total research and development expenditures are nearly double that of the next closest comprehensive institution in the Commonwealth. In the most recent year where comparable data is available, that's 21-22. And then during the 22-23 year, our total R&D expenditures had a 20% growth rate to more than $9.2 million. We're the only comprehensive institution in the Commonwealth today meeting Carnegie's R&D expenditure threshold for R2 status. And we have set as a goal in the next 5 years to double these numbers at Western Kentucky University. So I want to show you a couple of other things. These are the last 4 years of R&D expenditures. I'm proud of where we are today. You see we've rebounded from the pandemic, which took a chink out of our armor, but we're able to really do well. And then another slide that shows our total grants and contracts. Again, I'm proud of our commitment to do this even in the face of COVID. So, to meet both of Carnegie's R2 high research activity requirements, we need a path. We need a path to create more doctoral opportunities in high demand areas. And so Senate Bill 201 permits a comprehensive university once CPE promulgates requirements to offer limited PhD programs based on the workforce and the economic needs of the Commonwealth. And so for us to continue along the path, to accelerate and continue our research growth and portfolio, and to meet the talent needs of our region, we really need to offer a select number of PhD programs. WKU is poised to be the first comprehensive university to be able to offer PhD programs, and that would solidify us as the Commonwealth's first Research 2 institution. Senator Gibbons.
Wonderfully said, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. If there are any questions, we'd be glad to entertain those.
As of right now, we have no questions. I've got a couple myself. It does, once you reach R2, would that have any kind of negative impact on your current mission, or would that force you to cut back in other areas?
So it would alter very little about what we're currently doing, right? So we will continue to have a deep commitment to the undergraduate experience. It would grow the research portfolio that creates opportunities for undergraduates to engage in research alongside faculty members. But it would also change the kind of mix of our labs. And so when a professor is running a research lab at WKU today, they're doing that basically with the assistance of undergraduate students and master's degree students. With PhD students, it changes the kind of faculty that we can recruit. Meaning, if you found an associate professor with a functioning lab that met the needs of the region, wanted to partner with the companies and organizations we have, we can bring them, we can bring their PhD students, and we can recruit additional PhD students for that work. So it just ratchets up the level of performance and capacity at the institution.
And so according to your testimony on the Carnegie levels, the $5 million, I'm assuming your $8 million, your $9 million, those are not precarious funds. You would anticipate those would go on perpetuity.
Not only would we not expect them to decrease, the goal is to double those in the coming 5 years as we continue to increase the research portfolio of the university.
Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regard to the 5 research doctoral, do you anticipate that you would offer all 5 of these, or would some of these possibly go to I know NKU or Murray State has talked about cybersecurity, which is their area of excellence. Would they be able to get those?
So there's a pathway that's going to be created that I think that if one of those other universities met the requirements that CPE would work toward, that would be a conversation between them and CPE. Right? And so one of the things that's important for R2 is you have to have the research infrastructure already in place, which we have built over the past 20 years at WKU. And so I'm not familiar with what they have in place, but I think that there's a pathway for that to happen.
Brief response in addition. Thank you for the question. I think the language actually indicates, starting at sub 2 on line 14, a comprehensive university may provide no more than 5. So each institution would be given the chance under fulfilling the requirements by CPE. So it's not 5 for all the comprehensives to divvy up among themselves. It's up to 5 per comprehensive.
Thank you.
We have no further questions. Thank you for the excellent presentation on the bill. Excellent bill, Senator Gibbons. Do any other members have any other business? Senator Carroll.
Mr. Chairman, just an overall comment. It's, we talk a lot about our universities and some of the degrees and programs that really don't benefit the Commonwealth much at all, and in many cases don't benefit the students. And it's good to see these three universities stepping up and adding programs, building on what they're already doing in areas that are going to make a difference in this Commonwealth. And that's refreshing to hear, and I compliment all three, and I'm in full support of all three proposals. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.